So this week for KIN 234 and 214, this is going to be our last week meeting together on campus. After this week, campus is going to close based on the COVID surge, even though deaths are down. And yeah, so we're going to close hopefully only for, well, whatever, it's going to be towards the end of the semester. So we won't meet again, right? And hopefully it's only temporary and we get things going for spring, which means that we're going to really be um, focused on the online aspect. And so Tuesdays are going to be important to catch up from the last few weeks, and then Thursdays as we're moving forward for our course. So Thursdays will be for 214. It's going to be really weird. I still have to figure out what we're going to do. For 231, it's going to be no big deal. We're going to focus mostly on case studies, program design, exercise programming. The assessments that we would have done, we're going to talk about on Thursday. But this Thursday we'll meet. We're going to do more of the functional movement screening stuff, and then some of the interventions for flexibility. For strength assessment, it's going to be the really muscular endurance, like a sit-up test, a push-up test, which you guys can easily do at home on yourselves or have work with someone else. There's really no strength assessment. The only thing that we aren't going to do that we actually might do this Thursday is like the grip, the hand dynamometer, and just to kind of experience active and passive insufficiency in those positions. So we'll probably knock that out on Thursday. And then for the cardiovascular assessment, we won't have the availability to do the submax bike test, but we can talk about how we would do that. And I got to be honest, I think I've in my entire professional career, outside of this teaching fitness assessment class, I have never ever conducted a cardiovascular assessment. Right? We've done VO2 max type assessments, but mostly for metabolic output. But in terms of having a client go do a mile run, like you want your clients to like you and stay with you and still continue to hire you, and making them do cardiovascular assessments, they're going to be. And with that said, is most of the assessments that you do for strength and cardio are integrated into your programming already. So every time you work with a client, every time they show up and they work out with you, every set, I would say even every rep is an assessment. You're always looking at technique and form and making sure everything's okay. You're kind of looking at your numbers and making sure that they're making progress. So you're always analyzing, always assessing. And so to have like these specific strength assessments, I think the biggest time should actually be spent in the movement quality. Like how well are they moving? Are they able to reach their arm over their head? Is there pain with rotation? Are they stuck in something? That really is where a lot of the assessment comes in prior, like the pre activity. And then when you get into the strength aspect, you're just gonna start working with your clients. I think it's actually grossly inappropriate to like most of the strength assessments are like 1 RM. So how much can you bench press? How much can you squat? How much can you push? Like any of those lifts. And we think about the people you're working with, unless they're athletes, these are people that aren't even ready to do those movements. So you're going to have them do a maximal assessment on something they haven't even mastered yet. So it'd be grossly negligent to do that. So what we're going to focus on moving forward here is going to be the whole the exercise variables that you are able to manipulate. So at this point, I'm going to actually start directing you guys to things to read on your own. So like the textbook we have for this class is really, let me see, pull it up here. The textbook we're using for this class is the same textbook we use for 230, and let's see, what's that? Essentially personal training. Is so if you didn't know, we've been operating out of chapter 11. Right now we're in chapter 12, looking at like flexibility, and you get some stuff in here to read about the dynamic stretching and passive stretching aspect. But where we really going to go to with the rest of the semester is the program design, so part 4, and particularly the resistance training. And when you go through this chapter, there's a lot to read on on these different terms, like what specificity is, variation, overload progression. These actually coincide with the KIN 230 lectures. And so for, I think it's only Kate and a couple other people, what I'll do is I will make those videos available. What I'll probably do is just grant you access to the I'll add you as a student to the KIN 230 shell, and you can look at these videos because the videos do go in very much with the overload and progression, specificity, and basically what this is this is talking about is that one step back, two steps forward. We've talked about it in KIN 230 about the oh no, Kate, you're in 230? No, Kate, are you in KIN 230?
I'm not in 230. I'm just in 241 and 231 and 214.
Okay, all right. So that's right, because you need 230 to take 231, but I forgot that I offered you an override. Okay, so besides you, I think everyone else is in 230. So I will. Are you okay? I mean, I'm going to add you as a student, so that means you'll be getting Blackboard messages and everything. Are you okay with that?
That's good with me.
Okay, perfect. So in that class, as you guys remember from this last exam you guys just took, that we talked about overload and progression and the one step back, two steps forward. So we talked about it theoretically. Now what we're going to do in this class is we're going to look, how do we actually do that? How do we create overload within the tissues? And then how do we do the minimal amount of progression just to stay within that happy medium, right? Not too much, not too little. It's the whole Goldilocks principle. And that comes from the manipulation of your exercise, like from this approach here, your exercise order, the selection, your training frequency. So these are the 10 things that you're going to really be emphasizing when you're looking at program design. So when you actually sit down to write a program for someone, or you are trying to achieve someone's fitness goals, you're going to be going through these aspects. And so the initial consultation assessment we are talking about, and I kind of already alluded to it, that we are every minute you spend with your client is a consultation. It's an evaluate. You're always evaluating. You're always starting first with the mental state and stress level of your client. Like, are they ready for the exercise today? Did they have a shitty night before, or did they crush it? Are you expecting like a high performance day or a low performance day, right? They got a poor night's sleep. They didn't eat well. They had a fight with a significant other. They were late to your training site. Whatever factors are robbing them of their resources, of their bandwidth, that's going to affect your training session for that day. On the contrary, let's say they had a good night's sleep, everything's going well, you can probably expect to have like on par or high performance day. Your training frequency is going to be based on your overall training goals, so how you split your body parts up, and we'll talk about like the training age of your individual. So are you a beginner where you have very low load tolerance, or are you intermediate, or are you advanced where you have very high load tolerance? And where this comes into play is the split. How do you split up or change up your training regimen? So are you doing full body workout 3 days a week, right? That's one split. Or are you only doing 2 days a week? Are you doing upper body, lower body 3 days a week, or every other day, or 1 day on, 1 day off, or 2 on, 1 off? Or do you break it up into like four training days, 5 training days, 6 training, hopefully not 7 training days, but some people do that. So that's basically how are you strategizing to cover all your bases for the body. Then you get into the aspect of exercise selection, where we're looking at, are you prioritizing big muscle groups? Are you prioritizing weak areas? Are you how are you choosing your exercise movements, the arrangement of the exercises? And then this is where we'll spend a lot of time, is 5, 6, and 7, where these are the actual variables. And so let's kind of move into that. As you go through, you will see that each of these, and I really, out of all the textbooks, I think the NSCA, this one that we use, is great at like teasing this out and helping you kind of navigate the process for the first time. And I'm sure many of you have probably thought about like how many sets and reps you've done. You look things up and say, hey, I'm going to do five sets or 5 reps. So I want to hit like neuro, and 12 for this. But that's only one part of the equation. How many sets you do, how much weight you do, that's one of 4 or 5 variables that we can manipulate. And that's just at this intermediate level. Like, you can get really advanced in terms of your combination of things. And there's a lot of people out there on blogs and videos that are showing things for this, but we'll keep to the basics for this class. But the big aspect here is what the client wants to do, what their training goals are, right? Do they want to get big and strong, lean and mean, or more tolerant or pain-free, whatever their goals are. And that's the first big aspect. The second big aspect is going to be their training age, or how long they've been working out. Not their actual biological age, but their how much experience does their body have at putting on load. And what also comes into play is, are they totally new to it? So you got a 40-year-old athlete or 40-year-old individual that's never worked out their entire life, or do you have a 40-year-old individual that was an athlete that took 5 years off and coming back into the game? There's a big difference between what the expectation is and what the tolerance is going to be for that. So all these come into play when you're trying to come up with exercise variables. I would definitely, between now and next week, next Tuesday, read through this chapter, right? And not read through it and like, all these things, but at least be somewhat familiar with it. Because I'm going to have a video posted for next Tuesday that's going to be basically this, and it's going to have a lot of terminology in there. And if you're trying to figure out like how to figure out what volume is versus time under tension versus your rest periods versus your training load versus your actual load, it's going to make it hard for you to follow through. Not that you couldn't watch the video again, but we're kind of on a time crunch because our first case study is going to be not this Thursday, but next Thursday. And you're going to be expected to kind of create an exercise program for it. And I'm going to be when I grade these case studies, I'm going to be basically a jerk. I'm going to be very like, why did you do this? And why did you do that? And you're going to have to justify when you have someone that, like, you're going to be given a person that you have your training age and you have what their goals are. And it's going to be, here, create a workout program, right? So how many days a week are they going to be training? What are they going to be doing during those sessions? What are their exercises they're going to do? What order those exercises in? What's your training variables, your sets and reps for those? How much time are they taking between each set? How much time are they taking to do the set? So how much time in the eccentric phase, concentric phase? And then what are they doing afterwards if there's some left in reserve? That's what you're going to have to do. And then you're going to have to justify everything why you did that. I did this because of this. I did that because of that. So I'm going to be a stickler on it. And that's how our labs are going to go for the rest of the semester. And this is what we were going to do anyways with the case studies. And then that's how the final exam, in terms of the 2 essays, are going to be 2 big case studies where you have 2 people for basically your final grade of the semester. So we got a lot to cover, but it's really cool because what's nice is if you're working out, which all of you are, this is all going to end up being things that you're going to incorporate into your workouts anyways. You, instead of just doing things because you thought this is what you were supposed to do, you're truly going to start to own why am I doing 5 reps and why not doing 6 reps, 6 to 8 reps, or I was doing 12 to 15 reps and now I'm doing this, or looking at your total training volume of how many times you're working out per week and like how much junk volume you're doing, because you're trying. I'm keep on making like a peak here. You want to have that high optimization of high training stimulus without annihilation or wasting your time, right? The Goldilocks principle. Gerardo, I see you're trying to annotate on what's going on. You got a question instead?
No, that was an accident.
All right. So this chapter kind of gives you some examples. It kind of shows like exercise order, all those things I just talked about that this chapter kind of goes through. So again, for one chapter of the textbook, there's tons of information packed in here, and not tons of information like it's going to overload you. It's just there's a lot of valuable stuff that's here. You have this chart here, but then let me open up our Blackboard shell so I can kind of show you. Let me see if I have everything program design here. So I have, there's this document here from the NSCA and another document that gets into the foundations of the programming. And it's an additional resource that I would read through based on, this is the entire client process from consultation, fitness assessment, but particularly in the program design basics. Most of this comes out of the textbook, like they're simultaneous information, but it kind of groups things better in terms of like beginner, intermediate, advanced. It's a little easier to read because it's meant to really be an article instead of a textbook. So what a lot of like feedback I've gotten from students previous semesters is that they wish they would have read this first and then done the textbook. I think the textbook, if you read the textbook, everything in the textbook is going to be here. It's going to be throughout chapters. This document here is more of like a consolidated aspect. So if you can read the textbook and fine, great. Nothing more is going to be presented in this document. But if you read this document first, it kind of helps you maybe chunk it down into smaller sections, and then go to the textbook for earlier aspects. So you can do this preliminary if you want, or you can just skip it all together. But I do think it's a good document. It has a little bit more graphics, images, and it kind of shows some of the progressions and regressions that you could do. And then also here, the reason why I jumped over here is that you have this document, which is from the KIN 230 class. And this starts to help with the different movements. So when you're looking at exercise selection, give it a second for the document to open up. So I've mentioned many times in classes that you basically have 4 things that you can do. You can either push things away from you, pull things towards you. You can hinge at the hip, or you can change an elevation like a sit stand, or aka a squat. And you have variations within that. So within the pushing aspect, you have a vertical and horizontal, and then you have a vertical and horizontal. And some would argue that basically you have movements, push, pull, and hinge, and you can do like a quad dominant or a glute hip dominant type exercises. So if you have those 3 fundamental movements, the push, pull, and squat, that gives you your basis for your program design, right? So if you do a full body workout, the one thing we want to get away from is thinking like a bodybuilder, where it used to be body part, where you have a chest day, an arm day, a leg day, and that's bodybuilding, right? That's when you're focusing just purely on the muscle tissue. When you look at your program design moving forward, when you're not dealing with the sport of bodybuilding, you want to be looking at it from a movement perspective. Like, did you train your pushing movements? Did you get your pulling movements? And that includes then the body parts that are there. But what it does is it doesn't compartmentalize the like upper extremity, where you have like a chest day, a shoulder day, and an arm day, where you've now beat the hell out of all the tissues and you've gone beyond that recuperation ability, right? And so that's where bodybuilding gets in, is that they have these specific days based on this volume. And what I would be arguing, and what most fitness professionals are looking at, is, are you covering your bases from movements? And so stop thinking body parts and start thinking movements. And in there, you will get the muscular involvement. You can see that you have anterior deltoid, your deltoids, and the different muscle groups. But as we'll talk about in terms of redundancy or too much overload, right? Instead of taking 1 step back, how do we prevent ourselves from taking 2 or 3 steps back? We don't want to create redundancy where we're doing a chest day, a shoulder day, and an arm day. And now we've hit arms basically 3 times. You've hit deltoid 3 times, and you've hit chest maybe twice, right? So you have to be aware of the total volume that's being exposed to these tissues for stimulus. And one of the easiest ways to manage that is to get away from the body part mentality and focusing on movements. So you have, if you're going to do an upper body, like a full body workout, you're going to do a pushing movement, a pulling movement, and a squat, right? And as long as you have some variations of those 3, you can get yourself to your total volume for the day, which would be about 5 or 6 sets, like total working sets. Then as you progress, you can break it up into like an upper body, lower body day. So push, pull, and then legs. And then you can go to a 3-day split, which is a push, pull, and legs. And a lot of people, they go through their fitness journey, and that's where they'll end up. And that's, I think, a 3-day-a-week split where you're doing that. If you have the time to commit to the gym, you could do all the training volume you need, and you can easily do it in a push, pull, leg breakout. Some people like to incorporate a 4th or a 5th training day. And then what you would do is you would do like a pushing movement, pulling movement, leg, and you can kind of break it up for like 2 days on, 1 day off, 2 days on. And then some people really want to do 5 training days, which is fine. You have 5 iterations here. You have push, pull, right? Horizontal, vertical. So that's 4. And then you have hip hinge, glute dominant, and quad dominant. So you basically have 6 different things that you can push, pull in to try to cover all of your base for program design, right? Candace, you made it. Woohoo. Perfect. Oh, but you can't get to, all right, you're muted though. Hold on a second.
I was on the phone call, so I couldn't see anything.
Oh, okay. All right.
All right, we're good. We're good. We're
There
good.
you are. Perfect. Welcome. So yeah, so that's how you would progress through your design of your programs. And like I said, you can see that this is not just like, hey, you got to memorize this stuff and you're not going to use it. You'll probably start incorporating this into your own personal workouts anyway. So that's what's nice about this section as we start getting into the programming. So this is just looking at how you split up your workouts and how you pick your exercises. Then the other document that I have here is variables. And let me see if I can. So this is looking at your sets and your reps, and it's also looking at time under tension and rest. So these are basically your primary variables that you will manipulate to get your different training stimuli. And the stimuli here is here in the outcome. Like what is it that you're trying to get from your training session? Do you want more like pure strength from a neurological and like myofibril type hypertrophy? Do you want like a transition from strength to hypertrophy? And then do you want more cellular adaptation, metabolic stress versus like muscle tension? And you know, when you have these high loads here, you're getting more mechanical tension. When you have these higher reps, you're getting more metabolic stresses. And so you get different, and there's not one is better than the other. One's not preferred over the other. It's just one has certain set of outcomes and another has a different set of outcomes. And it all depends on your client's goals, their training age, and what you've been doing. And so the way you look at this is you have your sets and reps, and you can see that as your reps go, well, first let's start here with load. There's an inverse relationship between load and reps. So the more weight you do, the less time you're going to do it. And the reason why I jumped over here is textbook. This is your percentage of a max. So whenever you hear people say give 110%, 120%, that they're totally lying to you. You can't do more than 100% in physiology, right? You either have what you have or you don't, right? And so you can give effort and you can have a perceived effort, but in terms of like your strength, if you lift a weight that you can do just one time, one repetition, that was 100% of your resources going towards that one repetition, that one movement. And so that would be called a 1 RM or 1 repetition max. If I do anything less than that, like if I do a less weight, but I can do it multiple times, you start getting into sub-maximal workloads. So when you hear the word max, it's referring to the maximum amount that you can do in that one aspect. Now, it doesn't have to be 1. So if I look over here and I see 5, that's a 5 repetition maximum. So that's what I can do 5 times, no more and no less, right? So that was like 4 and my 5th rep, and there's no chance of me doing a 6. So it's what I did to failure, or I put 100% on the table. That represents about 87% of my 1 RM. So if my 1 RM was 100 pounds, theoretically, what I could be able to do 5 times to failure is 87 pounds. Or if I pick a load that I'm doing 12 reps, that's something I can do at 67% or 67 pounds. Every researcher has different scales. So if I flip back over to the other document that we were talking about, see that's a slightly different. Here, 85% is about 5 reps, 14 to 65. And this doesn't have to be a set in stone aspect, but just keep in mind that the amount of reps that you prescribe in your exercise programming, it's implicit, or at least it's understanding, it's assuming that it's to failure. So when you look at when you're working out, you are, and we'll in a video for next week, we'll look at the definition of failure. You have like total failure, where you are like, your form goes to shit and you're just doing everything you can to get that rep out there and you go to complete exhaustion. Or you have momentary failure, where you have a certain tempo that you're trying to maintain. So let's say it's like 2 seconds down, 1 second up, and you have really strict form. And once fatigue sets in and you hit that fatigue, you've hit just enough stimulus to get to where you need for training aspect. And so far too often people go to that absolute failure, and that's a fast way of getting to overtraining, and that 2 steps back and no steps forward versus the 1 step back, 2 steps forward. So when you look at this, when you say, hey, I'm going to do 5 reps, this is implying that you're going to do 5 reps and you're going to just barely get your 5 reps done, right? Not you 5 reps and you had to force it out, or you had to sacrifice form and technique to do it, but you roughly hit your 5 repetitions. So when you look at these exercise variables, you're never going to see a weight prescribed, like 120 pounds, 130 pounds, 200 pounds, 5-pound dumbbells, 30-pound dumbbells. It's always a load that you could do for 5 reps. And so that's where people get in the mistake of their training programs, is they think they do 100 pounds one week, they should be able to do 105 pounds the next week and 110 and so forth. And the load, the absolute workload, the actual weight, is 100% irrelevant, totally irrelevant. What's relevant is the repetitions that you're doing, the the mechanical tension that you generated for a certain amount of repetitions. And so what might happen is you might have a high training day, and what you did last week was 100 pounds, and you're trying to do 5 repetitions. So this week because you have a good amount of resources, you're well recovered, well rested, you might be at 105 pounds and knock it out at 5 reps, right? Or on the converse of that, you had a shitty day and your resources are drained. 100 pounds might crush you. 100 pounds under the bar and you only do 3 times, right? That training load was too high. You don't need as much stimulus to get the same output from that. So it's allowing you, instead of having this linear approach, you have like these undulating steps of like high days, low days. And instead of being tied to an actual number, like the absolute, which is called the absolute workload, you're focusing more on the relative workload. What does 5 reps mean to you today, right? Not what it meant last workout. And I don't care what the future is. I can't predict it. What does 5 reps mean to you, or 10 reps, or whatever the training variable that you're using. So you always want to try to match that. And that's how you perfectly get that peak of not too much, not too little Goldilocks, is instead of being tied to the actual weight, the number, 130 pounds, 30 pounds, 20 pounds, you're focusing on, I need my client or I need myself to get to 8 reps today. So I'm going to pick a weight that just gets there just enough, right? That gets me to the orange zone, not the red zone. So that's how you start to look through this and go through that. And then once you pick your load, you have your associated sets and reps, right? Your sets are what you need to get an effective training stimulus. This is your time under tension. This is looking at your eccentric, isometric, and concentric times of your lifts. So are you doing like a 3-1-2 tempo, which is 3 seconds down, 1 second transition, 2 seconds up? Are you doing a 4-0-1 where you're doing 4 seconds down, no transition, and exploding up 1 second in concentric? So it gives you, I would say that this here is probably the most underestimated or underutilized training variable to manipulate the total mechanical tension that's being generated with your clients. And then you manipulate your rest periods, how much recovery you're trying to do. Are you trying to do more mechanical tension? You're going to have more rest periods. Or are you trying to create more metabolic stress? You're going to have less rest periods. And all of this will be explained as we move through the next week or two for programming. But this is where we're headed with being able to do a program design. And I just wanted to explain what these 3 documents were here. And then you have your, make sure real quick. Yeah, training load, total repetitions within load. Yeah, so again, this chapter, there's a lot going on in this chapter and a lot of information, but I think what I would recommend is what my students have said in the past is I would start with this document here, kind of go through the program design, kind of wet your whistle a little bit, get acclimated with it, really try to understand like the difference between beginner, intermediate, and advanced, what would make a beginner, intermediate, and advanced, and then start looking at the different variables that kind of happen with that. With like the relationship between reps and sets, and we will start cranking this out. And you will, by the end of this class, you will be really comfortable designing programs based trying to match to the individual resources and goals of your clients. And it seems like a lot at the beginning here because everything's thrown at you, but it eventually ends up becoming a little bit more streamlined and makes more sense. Any questions? There's got to be questions, like even questions about your own workouts or anything about like what you're doing, or have you seen anything like this before, or exciting class today, you guys. Awesome.
Okay, how many compound exercises would you recommend per workout if it's just like a 45-minute to 1 hour workout?
So that's the first thing you have to do when you're looking at your programming. When you look at let me go to that 10 list thing. Oops. So when you're determining the training frequency, you also want to take in consideration the time of working out. And if you recall from the KI 230 last module, we looked at like time frames within which you want to keep your training. And so 30 minutes to 45 minutes is great because you're trying to keep your cortisol levels low. And so what that leaves then is, depending upon what your training split is how many sets do you need to get to your training stimulus, that optimal load? And it's roughly 10 sets per exercise, and up like between 15 and 20 sets per week total per body part, per like region that you need for that training stimuli. And so if you are of an advanced training and you need more on the upper end, the 25 reps or the 20 sets for that body part, and you want to keep your workouts within 45 minutes, you're not going to be able to feasibly get all that training into that one training day. So you might have to split it up to a 2-day-a-week training, right? So you might do pushing day on a Monday and then pushing again on Thursday. Let's say you're a beginner though, or relatively novice, or maybe even intermediate, and you only need like 12 or 15 sets for that stimuli, you could feasibly get that done in that one training session. And so you'd have like a pushing day, just 1 day a week. But the rule of thumb is about 8 to 10 sets per workout, total workout, right? And these are working sets, not just like your preliminary warm-up sets. So these aren't the sets that you did that were, let's say you're shooting for 10 sets and you want to get that you have like 5 sets that you're going to do for your, let's say 6 sets you're going to do for squats. I'm sorry, 6 to 8 reps, you're going to do 4 or 5 sets for squats. You might precede those with like 2 or 3 warm-up sets as you get to that training load. So your goal is to hit failure at 6 reps, but you've done a couple sets that were like you did 12 times, 10 times, 15 times. Your 10 sets are actual working sets that you're going to momentary failure. And let me just make sure that I'm, let's just do this real quick. So you guys heard of Orange Theory Fitness, and I've used it a lot in the cardiovascular aspect. And I'm just using any of these graphs here, what you can see is that exercise intensity goes up, you have the different colors based on the Roy G. Biv spectrum, right? And so when you're operating in the red, you're operating at full capacity. And so when we look here at any of these charts here, when you're competing in sports, you're in zone 5, like you're operating in the red. This is like putting everything out there. This would be when someone says give 110% when you're really giving 100%. Where you want to be with your training is you actually want to be just one step behind that. You don't want to hit maximal all the time. You want to be kind of in this high yellow or low orange zone. You want to stimulate, not annihilate. When you're training, when you see people in the gym like going nuts, like pushing out forced reps, drop sets, hour and a half in the gym, like they are operating in the red, they're exceeding their body's ability to recuperate. So to your question, Julia, when you're looking at how many sets you want to do, 12 to 15 sets in one training session would be operating in the red. 10 working sets in a training session, you're getting down in the zone. 8, you're here. And then you also risk of doing too little. If you only get in and you do 5 sets, well, you've operated down here. You're not really doing anything to change. That's where the 10 sets per workout, about 15 to 20 sets per body part or per group per week is the kind of the rough zone for the training. And I don't have the guy's name off the top of my head. I have his book. He's a really big researcher. There hasn't been a lot of research except for the last like 5 to 10 years. They've been more and more in terms of looking at the science of set and reps. And actually, if you look at if you do a search on science of set and reps, you'll find a lot of stuff that's coming out. And I kind of like this one, the Stronger by Science guy. And he kind of goes through and looks at some of these. James Krieger, that's the guy. So James Krieger is he's a researcher out of I think New York University, and and he's got a lot of cool stuff. He's the premier researcher right now. So when you want like evidence-based, almost everything I'm going to share with you in this class is going to be off of evidence-based training, and mostly coming out of James Krieger's research, because he's the one that's actually doing a lot of this cool stuff. So he's the one that kind of found empirically, and so it's not just his opinion. This is based on his data, that about the 10 sets per body part, 10 sets per workout is about the key to get to that orange zone, and about 15 to 25 or about 20 sets per week for that training volume to maximize muscular development, right? And you might say, well, what if none of my clients want to get strong? They just want to get lean. Remember, your metabolism is tied to lean body mass. And so everyone's goal is increased muscle activity, increased lean body mass. and nobody is sad to lose body unless you're a sumo wrestler or a sumo wrestler. You're the only athlete that doesn't care about losing body fat. So everyone's goal really is to increase lean body mass, decrease fat mass, and it all comes from this muscular development. So everyone's going to be training in the relatively same exercise variables. You might just vary based on your, the only people that start to vary a little bit are the athletes. So the 10 sets would be your goal for that. But less is more, right? So 10 sets is like the average. Some people might need a little bit more stimulus. So some people might need 12 sets. A lot of people might need only 8 sets. And so I would rather err on the side of being conservative. And this is assuming you are an intermediate to quasi-advanced trainer, someone that's been working out for at least 2 years. If you have not been working out for a while, or you're totally newbie to it, your total sets might be like 4 or 5 sets is all you need to get training stimulus. And that's why you could feasibly, for a beginner, do a full body workout, because you're only going to do 4 or 5 sets per workout per group. So you got 4 sets in the let's say you do 2 or 3 working sets of squat, 2 or 3 working sets of a pull down, and 2 or 3 sets of a push. There's your 9 total sets for your workout, and you covered all your bases. You start to get up in those areas where you need 10 sets just for your pushing activities. Well, if you try to do a full body workout, you're doing 10 sets for pushing, 10 sets for legs, and 10 sets for pulling. You're at 30 working sets. Your workout's like 2 hours, and you beat the hell out of your body, right? So then you're going to have to split your workout up into different training days. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So with my workouts, I've been actually trying to keep track of which zones I reach with like my heart rates.
Okay.
And lately, I've barely been touching like zone 4, zone 3 with my same workouts. Would that be time for me to like turn up the intensity, or because this is all within like less than 30 minutes?
So is your goal conditioning, and is your goal strength?
I want to be able to, I'm not really sure how to put it, but
You want to be able to what?
I want to be able to like keep up intensity for longer. If that makes sense.
Okay. So when you're looking at your training, you want to look at, are you training for conditioning, more metabolic stress, or are you training for muscle development, more mechanical stress? And you could feasibly do both at the same time, but it's sometimes better to kind of divide those out. And if you remember from KI and 230, we talked about like trying to get that growth hormone response and trying to maximize the fat burning. That's a metabolic stress, right? You're doing a lot in a short period of time to try to increase that metabolic output. You will condition your ability for high intensity, and you will be putting some muscle tension on the tissues, but you may not getting the mechanical stress that you need for the increased strength gains. And so if you're trying to do your weight training, your mechanical stress, and you're also trying to elicit a metabolic aspect, you might not have enough. You might be strong enough now, but you're not powerful enough to go through that. So you might want to reduce your weight training and maybe do more like sprinting, jumps, more explosive type aspect where you're combining that rapid muscle contraction, where you remember the faster you try to contract, the less tension you generate. So you're going to get that metabolic stress, and the landing is going to increase your muscular tension. So getting away from your traditional weight training exercises, like if you're doing bench press, deadlift, and then maybe move into more of these multiple muscle groups like a clean or your kettlebell stuff, or more of the CrossFit type aspect to get to that conditioning if you want that intensity.
Right. I have been doing more of that CrossFit type aspect, like not really any traditional lifting.
Oh, so you're not doing traditional lifting?
No.
Okay. So you've been conditioning stuff and your heart rate's not getting there.
Right.
You also have to take in mind, so just like when we have the law of averages where your max heart rate, like how are you calculating your max heart rate? Like the 220 minus your age?
Yeah. It's all like programmed in my watch.
Yeah. So the 220 minus your, let's just do the. This is the problem with max heart rate. Unless you actually do VO2 max test, you won't. Let's see if you see a graph of. So when you see max heart rates, like it's all over the place, right? And you just might be someone that has a higher threshold for capacity. So what would be a red zone for most people might only be an orange zone for you. And you as you get become more adapted on top of it. So this is not just like a static thing. As your neuromuscular and musculoskeletal resources become more effective, you're able to do more and spend more time in the aerobic state. And so then you basically you're getting more tolerant. So you're able to handle more of those loads. The body perceives that not as stressful, and so it doesn't need to elicit as much of a cardiovascular response. So you can either ramp up the intensity, but if you're trying to keep yourself within a particular heart zone because you think that at whatever your age is minus you just might be a little bit higher than that for your load tolerance. Does that make
Okay.
sense, or is that not answering your question?
Yeah, it is. So I pretty much just need to turn everything I'm doing a little bit up.
Yeah, so it's just time to ramp it up some more, which is good. It's part of the progression.
Sweet.
So you guys, because I'm glad Gerardo brought that up. There's when you look at your training aspect too, you want to make sure you're delineating between what you're training for. Are you trying to increase total muscle strength and performance, or are you looking at more of the conditioning response? Do you want to be specifically strong in a particular movement or lift and have the carryover for the muscular development, or do you want more of the conditioning aspect where, like, think squatting versus sprinting, right? Both are working same muscles, both are a high intensity aspect, but squatting is doing more mechanical tension. It does create some metabolic stress, but it's looking at mechanical tension. Whereas conditioning, like sprinting, is really looking at the metabolic stress, but it's also developing some muscular tension. And so you want to make sure that you are emphasizing, you're prioritizing each of those, or at least segregating those out. A lot of these CrossFit type things, they'll do their strength training first and then the conditioning afterwards. I don't recommend that. That's like 45 minutes of strength training and 45 minutes of conditioning, or 30 and 30. That's a lot of total stress for the day. This is where you could kind of wrangle in your clients that want to work out 5 or 6 days a week. You can have like 3 strength training days, like muscular tension stress, and 3 conditioning days, like metabolic stress. And then you are able to get the 6 training days, but you're kind of varying the aspect there. And I don't think I made it clear in the KIN 230 class that the metabolic stress is what you're trying to do to optimize growth hormone for fat loss. So when you're trying to keep your workouts under 20 minutes or so, it's the conditioning workouts that you're trying to do for the fat loss. For the mechanical stress for weight training, 20 minutes might not be enough time to do that. So you might need to get into that 35, 45, 60 minutes for that training session. When you start getting beyond that 60 minutes, like into 75, 80, 90, especially 2 hours, you've eliminated all you should be doing every day is eating, sleeping, and working out, and that's it. Like, you don't have any other stresses in your life if you're going to do a 2-hour workout 5 or 6 days a week. It's insane. Am I still sharing my screen? Perfect. Yeah, so I'm going to post this. I like this website, Stronger by Science. They look at different. Everything's evidence based, right? There's another book out called Body by Science that was kind of the precursor to this. Yeah, this guy's a power lifter, so he looks at it from a strength perspective. But through here, you can like get through like James. Let's look at James Krieger again. Either way, I'm gonna see, but I'm gonna a lot of the, like I said, well, I'm gonna update the Blackboard shell to have a lot of these articles there and references. I have my own library, but it's on my OneDrive, so I can't operate it now. But like, I think this is a good article. And there's another guy. Another guy that I just found on YouTube that what he does. What I like about a lot of the YouTube videos is that they basically do what articles, like when you look at magazine articles, they take peer-reviewed journals, so like evidence-based research journals, and they make them more exciting to read. They're not as dry. And this one YouTuber, he does that. He takes the research articles and then makes little videos for them. And so I'll share some of those videos as well. I think it's a nice way. I'm not, I don't think all the Instagrammers and YouTubers are bro science meatheads, I think some of them are taking some good evidence and making them more digestible to the masses. And so I think it will make it easier to learn, but I'll share those as well. But that's what I would be doing for the net from between now. Like we'll meet on Thursday to finish up the movement science, the movement quality. We'll look at like the functional movement screen. We may or may not do the hand dynamometer. And then Thursday will be our last actual day together on campus. And then we'll be moving to the online aspect for programming. But I would start to read through this chapter now, kind of get acclimated with the terminology. I would go through that one document for the, I would go through that one document. Where am I at here? This foundational document. So everything in this module, a 7 folder, and just become acclimated with it, make sure you're reviewing the moves and muscles, and then we'll start moving forward with our program design. I think what we'll do is, and I'll talk about on Thursday, is I'm going to have you guys all do an audit of your own individual workouts right now. And so what we'll do is we'll, as a class, we'll analyze everyone's workouts and kind of see what we're doing, see what the goals are, and we can kind of learn from this group work. And I'll either pair you up or group you up, and I'll figure out how to group things up. And then what we'll end up doing is we'll pick 5 people. And as a class, we'll develop a program for those 5 and kind of modify them based on their goals. And then we'll start with the theoretical clients, because all of us in class are somewhat conditioned and working out. So let's get to the like your 50 and 60-year-old clients, people that are just training or post-injury or different scenarios that might necessitate a change in your approach. Any questions?